"You're not on the list," my dad said, and shut the door in my face at my mom's 60th birthday. I stood there holding a gift, humiliated, while my sister smiled behind him. That moment shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. But what they didn't expect was that I'd show up again, with the truth, a plan, and power they never saw coming. This isn't just a revenge story. It's how I took my life back. I'm Sloane Carter, and at 35, I never thought I'd be standing outside my mother's 60th birthday celebration without an invitation. I was always close to Mom. That's what I believed anyway, until my father glared at me and barred the door. He said, "You're not on the list," as if I were an outsider attempting to attend a famous function. As I stood there with my heart broken and my gift in hand, I noticed my sister Briar grinning. "Tell me where you're watching from before I tell you what occurred next. If you've ever been left out by those who ought to love you the most, hit the like button." It wasn't easy being the middle child in a Chicago suburb. Between my younger brother, Grayson, the beloved baby, and my elder sister, Briar, the academic star, I lived in the background. The pictures of our family tell the tale. Grayson getting pampered, Briar taking center stage with awards, and me? I was just there, usually half-cropped out of the picture. But Mom was different. She used to be, however. I was sad when I returned home from Melissa Anderson's birthday celebration when I was 7 years old. "Not everyone gets invited to everything," Dad rationalized, while Mom sat with me and made paper party hats. "Just the two of us had our own small party," she muttered. "You're unique in your own way, Sloane. Never forget that." My model of the solar system took 3rd place in the science fair when I was 12 years old. Mom framed my certificate even though I didn't get 1st place like Briar normally did. Her words, "It's not about being the best. It's about doing your best." She hung it directly next to Briar's accomplishment wall. 3 days later, Dad removed it, claiming it cluttered the wall. However, Mom concealed it in the drawer by her bed. When friends abruptly had to postpone their plans for a more popular girls' party on my 16th birthday, Mom took me 2 hours into the city to watch a musical I had been wanting to attend. She treated me like I was the most important person in the world, and we dressed up and went to a fine restaurant for dinner. "Sometimes it's quality, not quantity, that matters with relationships," she reassured me. My anchors were those moments, evidence that I was actually noticed by someone in my family. However, after I departed for college, everything changed. I traveled farther to Boston University than Briar, who stayed nearby at Northwestern. "Why so far?" grumbled Dad. "Are we not good enough for you?" That geographical gap eventually turned into an emotional one. I shocked myself and everyone else by succeeding in the computer sector after college. I aggressively ascended the corporate ladder while Grayson bounced around bartending jobs and Briar followed Dad into the family insurance business. Managing more than 200 workers and a budget that made my father's insurance company look like a lemonade stand, I was director of operations at Vertex Technologies by the time I was 34. My achievement caused a rift. Holiday discussions turned into minefields. "You're still working for the computer company, then?" Even though I had been sending gift baskets with Vertex's logo to the family every Christmas for the previous 5 years, Dad would still ask, "When will you get married and start a family so your mother can have grandchildren?" Was the unavoidable follow-up, even if Briar and her boyfriend Miles were also childless. The actual conflict, though, was with Briar. She cornered me in the kitchen 3 Thanksgivings ago after I had had too many glasses of wine. "You believe that your affluent Boston lifestyle makes you so unique." She cut into the pumpkin pie with needless force and hissed, "You don't understand what it's like here. Having to deal with Mom and Dad every day, while you send them gifts every now and then and consider that to be family." I explained myself by saying, "I call every week." She yelled, "I invite you all to visit, to show off. With you, Sloane, everything is a competition. Has always been." It was astounding how ironic that Briar would say that. Growing up, I had watched her win awards while applauding from the sidelines. "That's unfair," I replied very quietly. "I earned what I have through hard work. And we haven't." She squinted her eyes. "You believe that your escape makes you superior to us? Mom doesn't boast about your work, let me tell you that. She's not even aware of what you do. Being a true daughter, I'm at least here." She was unaware of the depth of those remarks' impact. Following that Thanksgiving, Mom started calling once a week, then once a month, and finally sometimes She sounded aloof and preoccupied when we did talk. The woman who used to store my award from the science fair in her drawer now had trouble recalling even the most basic facts about my existence. As usual, Grayson followed Briar's example. One-word responses replaced the light-hearted texts I used to exchange with my younger brother. He barely acknowledged me when I was there the last time, spending the whole weekend glued to his phone. My father had never supported me, but his rejection solidified into something more difficult. He would add, "Your mother worries about you," in our less and fewer conversations. "Working too much alone in that city. For a lady your age, it is not normal." I made an effort to clarify that I wasn't by myself. I had a life I had created, friends and coworkers. However, they didn't consider achievement to be success at all if it didn't fit their idea of family. It was a failure with a corner office and fancy clothes. Most painful of all was Mom's slow retreat. The woman who used to spend 2 hours driving for a musical now found it impossible to talk on the phone for 5 minutes without Briar looming in the background. She once said in a low voice, "Briar says you're too busy for us now." Sloan, is that accurate? The story had already been written, regardless of my response. The daughter who departed was me. The one who put work before family. The antagonist in a story I never consented to play the lead. The tipping moment was last Thanksgiving. I finally lost my temper after Briar made another scathing remark about my empty life. After putting down my fork, I remarked, "At least I built my life myself. I didn't just walk into Dad's office and act like I'm unique." There was silence at the table. Mom appeared stunned. Dad's cheeks flushed. Quietly, triumphantly, Briar answered, "I think you should leave." So I did. That evening I ordered a cab, packed my bags, and took a plane back to Boston. Nobody apologized over the phone. Until 3 months later, when I came across the Facebook post regarding Mom's 60th birthday celebration, nobody phoned at all. She hardly utilized social media. Thus it was from Briar's profile instead of hers. All of our extended family was invited to a lavish celebration. Apparently everyone but me. On a late night at work, I was aimlessly browsing Facebook when I came across the post. The event page celebrating Evelyn Williams' 60 Years of Love featured a professionally designed banner prepared by Briar. Mom's former college roommate, who now lived in Florida, childhood neighbors, and relatives I hadn't seen in years were on the guest list. Noticeably missing from the going list was my name. The blue light in the darkened office illuminated my face as I gazed at the computer. In Boston, it was almost midnight. As the cleaning crew scrubbed my desk, I continued to read the quarterly reports. It was just this dedication that my family questioned. However, it was also the reason I had gained respect in a field that wasn't always welcoming to women. "Sloan." Tessa, my helper, came through the door. "Are you still present?" The security guard contacted to inquire about the status of the situation. I squinted at the Facebook tab. "Just completing a few tasks." Unconvinced, Tessa nodded. "You know, most people don't work on Fridays until midnight. When did I become normal?" I tried to smile, but it fell short of my eyes. I reopened Facebook after she left and did something I hardly ever let myself do. I looked at family pictures. Last year, I missed Mom's 59th birthday because to the Tokyo client emergency. I texted Grayson to congratulate him on his promotion to head bartender. Dinner for Dad and Mom's anniversary. Except for the vacant spot where I should have been, everyone was grinning. I grabbed my phone and gave my mom a call. She was always a night owl, even though it was late. "Sloan," she sounded taken aback. "Is everything all right?" That was our new relationship. Calls were not for connection, but for crises. "Mom, everything is good. I forcefully gulped. "I noticed your birthday celebration on Facebook." A pause. "Oh, that." I hated how tiny my voice sounded when I said I didn't get an invitation. She paused, then said, "I thought you were too busy," Briar said. "The Singapore expansion, the major project you mentioned? Next month, that is." I squeezed my nasal bridge. "It's your 60th birthday, Mom. Naturally, I would find time." "Well," she said in a slightly softer tone, "you should definitely come. A visit from you would be delightful." The discussion went on clumsily, with Mom giving the bare minimum of information while sounding oddly hesitant. I quickly purchased a first-class ticket to Chicago for the next weekend after hanging up. Even though I couldn't truly afford to spend $2,100, this felt significant. Essential. I called Tessa from my flat the following morning. Next Friday, I have to take the day off. A family matter. Are you taking a family vacation? She sounded truly surprised. How are you feeling? Very humorous. Please simply reschedule the vendor meetings. This trip's preparation turned into a military precision exercise. I spent hours searching for the ideal present, a high-end spa package at the resort Mom had once mentioned wanting to visit, combined with a vintage emerald brooch from an antique store that reminded me of one Mom had always adored in her grandmother's jewelry box. The sum was somewhat less than $3,000. Expensive, maybe, but I wanted to prove to them all that I still knew what would please Mom even though I was not there. Purchasing clothing was also a calculated move. In the end, I decided on a sapphire blue dress that was both fashionable enough to show that I was succeeding and conservative enough to win Dad's approval. As I swiped my credit card, I told myself, not very convincingly, that I didn't need their confirmation. I rehearsed chats in my bathroom mirror the night before my journey. It's wonderful to see everyone. Grin. Not overly excited. The business? It's going great, but enough about the job. Deflect. Don't boast. Briar. Despite the fact that she initiated it, I apologize for what I said over Thanksgiving last year. I practiced these phrases as if I were getting ready for my career's most significant presentation. I was in many respects. On the morning before my flight, Briar texted me. I heard you're on your way. Just try not to focus on yourself this weekend. I spent the whole Uber trip to Logan Airport staring at those words. What would I say in response to that? I finally typed, I'm excited to celebrate Mom. And stopped there. I had 3 hours on the flight to Chicago to switch between fear and hope. Without paying attention to a word, I skimmed through work documents before using the deep breathing exercises my therapist had suggested. During our meetings, Dr. Levine had indicated that your family triggers old patterns. Remember, you're not going back as the child you were then, but as the adult you are now. It's simple to say. Approaching the gravitational pull of childhood dynamics is more difficult to experience. I chose to stay at the Westin downtown instead of my parents' suburban home. Another choice that would probably be seen as Sloan being too good for us, but it was just too much to bear to sleep in my old bedroom, which was still adorned with the pennants from my high school debate team. Neutral territory was what I needed. A place to hide if things didn't work out. I lay out my clothes for the next day and ordered room service that evening. The dress in blue. The heels were silver and not too high. Mom had given me these simple pearl earrings as a graduation present from college. Everything was planned to convey the appropriate message. Not ostentatious yet successful. Still feminine but professional. Your daughter but independent. I didn't get much sleep. By morning I had persuaded myself that this journey would either mend everything or sever the last remaining bond. There was no compromise. I curled my hair, put on my makeup with shaking hands, and rehearsed a final grin in front of the mirror. I said in a whisper to my reflection, "Happy birthday, Mom. I hope it's good to see you." In keeping with Mom's flair, the location was a refurbished boathouse with a view of Lake Michigan. With floor-to-ceiling windows that let in the April sunlight flowing across the sea and natural wood beams, it was elegant without being pretentious. I recognized the vehicles in the parking lot, my cousin Stephen's motorcycle, Aunt Diana's sensible Subaru, and Uncle Charles's vintage Corvette. Every car owned by the Williams family like childhood toys. Upon approaching the door with my thoughtfully wrapped present in hand, I noticed Thomas, a friend from my father's college days, smoking outside. "Sloan," he raised his eyebrows. "Is that you, my dear? Years have passed." I smiled, slipping into childish formality. "Hello, Mr. Poulson. It's good to see you." He gave me a clumsy side hug and remarked, "At your age, you look exactly like your mother. She will be overjoyed that you made it." She merely expressed her desire for all of her kids to be present today. I felt perplexed after reading the comment. If Mom knew I was coming, why would she say that? Eliza, my cousin, came out of the building before I could inquire. "Sloan." She embraced me with a real look of astonishment. "I didn't realize you were coming. According to Briar, you were unable to attend due to a significant work-related issue." With a nervous knot in my chest, I answered cautiously, "I rearranged some meetings. It's Mom's 60th birthday. It would not be missed." Eliza's face changed slightly. "All right. Everyone is inside then. Your mother looks stunning." My father was standing at the entryway, greeting guests, and I followed her. His stance was still military straight from his years in the reserves, and his gray hair had just been clipped. He didn't grin when he saw me. Just that look of disapproval I remember from my early years. "Sloan," he told me bluntly. "Why are you in this place?" My practice greeting was knocked out of my head by the question. I tried to sound casual as I said, "I'm here for Mom's birthday." "Is that really that shocking?" He ran his finger along what looked like a guest list on the clipboard he was holding and looked down at it. "The list does not include you." Like a smack, those 4 words lingered in the air. Knowing that other guests were feigning not to watch while actually watching made my face flush. "There must be a mistake," I said. "Last week, I talked to Mom." "Of course I should come," she said. Dad's face remained the same. "There isn't an error. Those who are truly active in your mother's life have been organizing the celebration for months." My breath was taken away by the intentional malice in his comments. I noticed heads turning behind him. Curious looks. You could see the stress. This was deliberate public humiliation. I responded, lowering my voice even further. "Dad, don't do this, please. This is the reason I flew in. Just wishing Mom a happy birthday." He answered calmly, "You ought to have called first. For those who truly make time for family, this is a private party." Before I could reply, Miles followed her, and Briar was by his side. She was dressed in a delicate pink gown that was almost exactly like one that Mom had. Her mother's favorite soft waves were used to style her hair. It wasn't a subtle message. The real daughter was her, the legitimate inheritor of maternal love. "Is something wrong?" Her eyes shone with joy as she inquired politely. Dad reiterated, "Sloan is not on the guest list." Briar's fictitious worry was almost artful. "Oh, it's awkward." "Sloan, I thought we talked about this." I tried to remain calm as I said, "We didn't discuss anything after what happened at Thanksgiving. I had direct conversation with Mom." Briar shrugged. Mom probably felt put on the spot. "You are aware of her dislike for conflict." I scanned the audience inside the venue, looking past them. "Where's she? I want to talk to her directly." Dad firmly stated, "She's busy with her actual guests. I won't allow you to cause her any distress on her birthday." Behind Briar, I saw Miles shifting uneasily, his eyes glued to the floor. He was tall, dark-haired, glasses-wearing, and conventionally gorgeous. His suit appeared pricey, but it was a little too big, as if he were dressing up for someone else. I had only ever seen pictures of him on Facebook. I had never met him. He appeared noticeably uneasy about what was happening. I was still holding the gift when I heard an older woman murmur, "Is that Sloan?" I believed she had stopped communicating with the family. "Perhaps Cousin Stephen's wife," said another voice. Then there was a sharper murmur. Briar claimed that during Thanksgiving, she called Evelyn an unsupportive mother. "Is it possible?" Then, without lowering her voice, Briar asked, "Did she really believe she was welcome after what she said?" I realized then and there that this rejection was not spontaneous. It was prearranged. Planned. Probably eagerly awaited. I wasn't just left out. They were punishing me. I inhaled deeply and regained my composure. Here, I wouldn't cry. They wouldn't get the satisfaction from me. I answered, "I understand," and I was surprised at how composed I sounded. "Give this to Mom, please. It's a gift for her birthday." My father instinctively took the exquisitely wrapped surprise from me. I looked him in the eyes and said, "Tell her I love her and hope she has a wonderful birthday." I only came to say that. I turned and left without waiting for an answer, walking away with a calculated stride and a straight back. Despite my instincts telling me to flee this humiliation, I refrained from hurrying. I heard Briar giggle behind me, followed by my father's deeper voice saying something I couldn't quite make out. Before my hands started shaking so much that I was unable to get the key into the ignition, I had made it all the way to my rental car. My neatly applied mascara was suddenly in danger of turning into a flood of black. I held onto the steering wheel and concentrated on my breathing. In 2, 3, 4. Out 2, 3, 4. In this parking lot, I wouldn't have a breakdown. I would take a car back to the hotel, gather my belongings, switch flights, and return to Boston by tomorrow. We would close this chapter. Indefinitely. No more attempts at peacemaking. No more calls on holidays. No more acting as though we were a family rather than former housemates. A knock on my window almost had me jump out of my skin as I was about to start the car. Briar's boyfriend, Miles, stood next to my car and motioned for me to down the window. He had a worried, almost contrite look on his face. I briefly thought about ignoring him and leaving in my car. However, curiosity prevailed. I partially lowered the window. He said, "Sloan," and then nervously cleared his throat. "Ms. Williams." I instantly said, just Sloan is fine, and then I scowled. But how did you know that I should be called Miss Williams? Miles gave the arena a quick glance before turning back to face me. Because Vertex Technologies is where I work. Boston. I'm on the 3rd level of the software engineering department. I tried to locate him by running through the employment directory in my memory. Miles. Lawson, Miles, he added. About 8 months ago I joined. Moved from the Chicago office to spend weekends nearer to Briar. When I saw you today, I recognized you right away. It seems like the cosmos had a perverse sense of humor. My sister's boyfriend was employed at my company, which was the most tech-related in Boston. I hadn't even noticed because I had been so focused on operations and growth strategy. Is Briar aware that you are employed by me? I inquired. Not exactly, he said, his expression growing uneasy. She is aware that I work at Vertex, but I didn't say you were, basically her employer, that is. I completed for him. Despite not reporting directly to me, Miles was unquestionably in my upward management chain according to Vertex's organizational chart. Could I take a seat? He pointed to the passenger seat and asked. I think I should give you an explanation. I unlocked the door, even though I should have known better. Miles got in right away, his big frame making the rental car seem smaller. He started, I should have said something in there. What they did wasn't right. Why didn't you? The question sounded more pointed than I had intended. He grumbled, complicated family dynamics. Briar and I have only been dating for a year or so. I'm still figuring everything out. Well, you've witnessed the best of the Williams family, I remarked sourly. I actually followed you out here for that reason, Miles remarked, turning to look at me. What transpired inside wasn't an accident. It was talked about beforehand. My stomach grew constricted. What are you saying? Your dad and Briar discussed what to do if you showed up at the rehearsal dinner last night. Your father promised to take care of it. He hesitated. Your mother did not participate in that discussion. In some ways, it was worse to learn that they had actually planned my humiliation than to believe it had been an act of rash cruelty. Is my mother even aware that I attempted to attend today? I inquired. Miles paused. Earlier, she inquired about you. I pondered whether you could surprise her. You sent your regrets weeks ago, Briar informed her. That is untrue, I muttered. With a nod, Miles said, I know. Over the past year, I've learned a lot. Briar is always talking about you. I'm sure it's flattering, I remarked sardonically. It's difficult, he answered, picking his words carefully. There is a great deal of envy there. She would never acknowledge it, but she constantly compares herself to you. What is the object of jealousy? I couldn't contain my disbelief when I spoke. The golden child is her. It has always been. Miles remarked plainly, but you're the one who escaped. You created something wholly original. After pausing once again, he said, and at work. What at work? Sloan, you are appreciated. Highly esteemed. People discuss your strategic thinking and leadership style. It was odd to learn that Briar's sister Sloan was the Sloan Carter that everyone at Vertex looks up to. Bringing those two pictures into harmony. I listened to his comments in startled silence. Even though I felt like a failure in my family's eyes, I had unknowingly become a professional role model. Miles went on to say, Briar has been deliberately destroying your bond with your parents. Very brief remarks. You should reframe your absences as intentional rejections. Exaggerating claims. Quietly twisting things. Briar would remind your mom of some perceived slight whenever she mentioned missing you. And my mother believed her. That inquiry was laced with raw, piercing agony. Miles whispered softly, your mom has been dealing with some health issues. Not too serious, but sufficient to increase her susceptibility to manipulation. Mild depression. A few memory problems. Briar has been assisting, taking care of her prescription drugs and social calendar. The ramifications struck me like slaps. Briar had been creating a completely new story here in Chicago, one in which I was the antagonist, while I had been establishing my profession in Boston. The heartless daughter who left her family to pursue success in business. Why are you stating this to me? At last I inquired. My sister and you are dating. You ought to be faithful to her. Miles's gaze shifted to his hands. Because what transpired there was incorrect. Additionally, I've witnessed your treatment of others because of Vertex. Despite their errors, treat them with dignity. The narratives are inconsistent. After pausing, he shrugged sheepishly and said, also selfishly. When your boss is involved in your girlfriend's family drama, it's awkward. I laughed a little at that in spite of everything. I can picture. All right. How will you respond? He inquired. The surface of Lake Michigan glistened in the springtime sunlight as I gazed out at it. The simple solution would be to leave by car, go back to Boston, and end these traumatic relationships. My professional side was aware that there were situations when it was wiser to reduce your losses. However, there was another part of me that couldn't let things go this way, maybe the one that still remembered my mother crafting paper party hats when I was 7. I believe it's time for everyone to hear the truth, I stated gently. My mother is among them. With a smile of relief and little fear, Miles nodded. I'll back you no matter what you do. Just keep in mind that I must see these folks throughout the holidays. Grabbing the door handle, I reassured him, don't worry. I've gained some knowledge about managing challenging individuals in the business sector. A peculiar serenity descended upon me as we made our way back toward the venue. Perhaps this confrontation was exactly what had been required for years, even though it wasn't what I had planned for today. One of the most difficult things I have ever done was to walk back into that building. More difficult than my first significant board presentation. More difficult than dismissing a teammate I directly hired. A different type of courage was needed for this, the kind that comes from looking down at people who have known you since you were in braces and still think they have the right to define who you are. In order to evade my father's checkpoint at the main entrance, Miles and I went in through a side door. At this point, the festivities were well underway, with perhaps 60 people gathered around round tables. A huge screen displayed a slideshow of family photos. I noticed that I almost didn't make the carefully chosen list. Sitting at a middle table, my mother looked stunning in a purple dress that matched her silver hair. Unaware of the drama that had transpired at the door, she was giggling at something Uncle Charles said. Briar was the first to notice us. With growing realization, her eyes widened and darted between Miles and myself. She started swerving across the room right away, but it was too late. When the audience became quiet, Miles moved forward and spoke in a clear voice. I'd like to introduce Evelyn's daughter, Sloane Carter, to everyone. Then, at precisely the right moment, and my boss at Vertex Technologies. There was silence in the room. My mom's head jerked upward. Her eyes met mine with a mix of bewilderment and yes, what appeared to be sincere joy. Sloane, she got up, forgetting her napkin and dropping it to the ground. You arrived. Briar arrived before I could reply, her face flushed with rage. What are you doing, Miles? She growled. He said plainly the right thing. Then came my father with a thunderous expression. I believed I was clear at the door. You did, I said, maintaining a steady tone. But it appears that there has been some misunderstanding regarding my relationship with this family, which needs to be clarified. Mom came over, glancing between our expressions with increasing anxiety. What's happening, Charles? Why do you appear so irate? Her eyes softened as she turned to face me. I'm so glad you're here, Sloane, my love. Her genuine happiness upon seeing me validated Miles's statement that she was unaware of my rejection at the door. It was an outrage and a comfort to realize this. I softly took her hands in mine and murmured, Mom. I looked into my mother's eyes and said, I have a very important question for you. Did you believe that I wouldn't want to attend your birthday? She blinked, clearly bewildered. All right. Briar remarked that the large project you mentioned was keeping you too busy at work. I firmly assured her I never said that. In fact, I made it clear that I would be present when we chatted. I took a break from my job. Yesterday I arrived by plane. However, why? She looked at Briar and then at my dad. I went on, I was just at the door, knowing full well that everyone in the party was observing this family drama. Dad informed me that I was not invited. This celebration, he said, was for those who truly make time for their families. Mom's face changed from bewilderment to surprise. Charles, she continued, raising her voice, is this accurate? My dad's face flushed. Evelyn, we talked about this. Following her Thanksgiving remarks, we discussed no such thing, Mom cut in, her voice abruptly abrasive. My daughter is Sloane. She is invited to attend my birthday, of course. You could hear ice clinking in glasses since the place had become so quiet. The confrontation in front of Mom's bridge group and extended family wasn't how I had envisioned it happening, but perhaps public responsibility was just what had been lacking for so long. Knowing that everyone in the room was listening, I turned to face my mother and stated, there's been a pattern. My statements have been misrepresented for years. Work-related absences are presented as willful neglect. My decisions in life are presented as rejections of my family. Briar took a step forward, grinning broadly. Sloane, this is hardly the place or time. Everything, even Mom's birthday, is always about you. That's precisely what I mean. I pointed to her. The narrative that has been developed is that of me being selfish and self-centered. However, that is untrue. I looked around the room. A lot of you have known me since you were young. Despite my imperfections, I have always loved my family. I went to Boston, not Mars, for my career. Calls are reciprocal. Visits are reciprocal. Stephen, one of my cousins, nodded slightly. I caught Aunt Diana speaking to Uncle Charles in a whisper. Briar has been deliberately damaging my relationship with our parents, I added, changing my tone to the cool, collected tone I employed in crucial meetings. Escalating disputes. Redefining my accomplishments as desertion. Briar sneered, "That's ridiculous," but her eyes darted tensely to Miles. "Is it?" I turned to him and inquired. "Miles, before you met me today, what did Briar tell you about me?" Miles appeared visibly uneasy when placed on the spot, yet he gave an honest response. "That you were chilly, obsessed with one's career. You had referred to your mother as unsupportive, and said that you were being held back by your family." I answered firmly, "I never said those things." Briar yelled, "It was implied." "It wasn't," I retorted. "I defended myself at Thanksgiving after you said I thought I was superior to everyone else. I claim to have created my career on my own. The family is not being attacked by that. It is a factual statement." Mom appeared to be inconsolable. "Briar, is this accurate?" Quietly, she inquired. "Have you started to turn against Sloan?" Briar lost his temper. Her tone faltered. "You're not getting it." She went out. I stayed here and took care of everything, being the nice daughter, while she got to go and become Miss Big Shot Executive. What kind of gratitude do I receive? Even now you still get happier when she calls than when I'm in front of you. The room fell silent as her voice became harsh. I had an epiphany of empathy in spite of everything. Both of us were stuck in the roles that were given to us as kids. I was the rebel who went, and she was the achiever who stayed. Mom whispered, "Briar, I've never compared the two of you. I adore you both in different ways. Due to the fact that you are distinct individuals. So why do you keep her certificate from the science fair in your drawer?" With tears in her eyes, Briar demanded. "Third position. You still have it, even though she finished third 15 years ago." I was still. For her, that certificate, an old, yellowed piece of paper I hadn't given much mind to in years, had come to represent some fictitious partiality that I had never experienced myself. At last Dad, who had been unusually silent, spoke. "I believe we ought to carry on this conversation in private." "No," Mom firmly said. "I'm sick of this family's secrets and miscommunications." She looked at our gathered visitors. "I'm sorry for the drama. Enjoy the food and music, everyone. I need some time, as does my family." My father, Briar, Miles, and I followed her as she indicated a little side room. I saw glimpses of startled eyes and hushed discussions exploding in our trail as the door closed behind us. Mom took leadership in the private room in a manner I hadn't witnessed in a long time. "Everyone, take a seat." Like reprimanded kids, we obeyed. "Did you turn our daughter away at the door of my birthday party, Charles?" she asked, speaking to my father first. Dad moved apprehensively. "I was keeping you safe." "What exactly did she say after her remarks against the family?" Mom pressed. Not in Briar's interpretation, but in her own words. My dad appeared very perplexed. That she was being held back by us. That since we never helped her, she had to start again on her own. "I didn't say that," I interrupted softly. "It's true what I said. I developed my career myself. There was no attack. It was a factual statement. Following Briar's accusation that my life was meaningless." Mom looked at Briar. "Have you been purposefully separating me from your sister?" Our mother's pointed questions caused Briar's defiance to shatter. I was sick of being ignored. When Sloan steps in for the holidays, everyone goes crazy. Then, although I'm here every day, taking you to doctor's appointments and helping out around the house, Mom vanishes once more. Appointments with doctors, I turned to face Mom and asked, "What appointments do the doctors have?" Mom let out a sigh. "I've been experiencing some problems. Memory issues and mild sadness. It's been difficult, but nothing major. Briar has been really beneficial." "You never told me," I murmured, my pain audible. Mom acknowledged, then scowled. "Briar mentioned it might stress you out, with your demanding job. But now I realize that wasn't her choice. Everything was coming together. The growing distance from my mother. Her perplexity throughout our conversations. The manner in which Briar had established herself as the custodian of family secrets. "I apologize," Miles said abruptly. "I ought to have spoken up sooner. I have observed a few of these exchanges in which Sloan allegedly made exaggerated remarks." Betrayal flooded Briar's eyes as she turned to face him. "You're siding with her? Your girlfriend over your boss." Sides aren't important, Miles remarked softly. The truth is at issue. Like a church bell, the word truth hung in the air. For years, our family had been circling this idea, favoring cozy stories over challenging facts. I murmured into the quiet, I want to try again. Everyone. But we must be honest. Triangulation is over. No more games of gatekeeping. No more rewriting dialogue. Mom gripped my hand and reached out. I also want that. Sloan, I've missed you. More than you realize. Dad cleared his throat. If what you're saying is true, I might have made some mistakes in my judgment. Although it wasn't really an apology, it was important since it came from my father. Briar said nothing, her eyes welling up with tears. Her meticulously constructed persona as the ideal daughter and guardian of the family was coming undone. Furthermore, I was unable to determine whether she was relieved to finally put the load down or grieving its loss. I said, this won't be resolved in a single conversation. But it's a beginning. Mom stopped me just as we were about to rejoin the party. Your gift, she murmured quietly. The brooch of emerald. How did you find out? When I was 10 years old, you showed me Grandma's jewelry box, I answered. You mentioned a comparable one that was misplaced during the relocation. It was your favorite, you remarked. She started crying. Remember that? After all these years. I squeezed her hand and murmured, Mom, I remember everything important. I'm not necessarily not present just because I'm not here. We went back to the party. There was still tension, but it was lessened in some way. Lies are heavier than the truth, even if it is painful. I was surprised to see family members approaching me with true connection rather than simply small talk or cliches as the guests gradually resumed their talks. Genuine interest. Tentative warmth. For possibly the first time, even my father tried, asking me about my profession in an embarrassing way and with what seemed like real interest. As she processed her new reality, Briar stayed aloof. This encounter had revealed her vulnerabilities as well as her behavior. If that relationship could be repaired at all, it would take time. However, I felt something I hadn't anticipated that day as Mom cut her birthday cake, with Briar and I reflected in her smile on either side. I hope. I came back to my Boston office the Monday after Mom's birthday with the emotional equivalent of a hangover. It had been an exhausting but essential confrontation. I had stayed until Sunday, giving Briar the space she obviously needed, talking politely but stiltedly with Dad, and spending quiet time with Mom. As I entered with my coffee, Tessa looked up from her desk. All right. How did the family get together? She inquired. Eventful, I said, forcing a tiny smile. Very eventful. And did they recognize the wonderful, prosperous woman you have grown into? She taunted, half joking, half serious. As I was speaking, it dawned on me, actually, I think they're starting to. Around 11 a.m., the weekend's professional ramifications arrived when I got an email from HR stating that Miles Lawson's departmental transfer request had been granted. The boyfriend of my sister was switching to the product development team from software engineering. It was a lateral action, but it removed him from my line of command. Suitable for a professional setting. For myself, complex. In the afternoon, I gave Miles a call. You didn't need to switch departments, I replied when he responded. He answered, it seemed like the right thing to do. With everything in mind, clearer boundaries. How is Briar handling everything? I asked, the question I had been trying to avoid. Miles let out a loud sigh. She's having trouble. The narrative she had been living under was destroyed by your confrontation. A pause occurred. She issued a directive to me. Saturday evening. My stomach grew constricted. Me or you? Basically, he affirmed. She said I would leave Vertex if I respected her. I nearly laughed at the familiarity of the manipulation. How did you explain it to her? He stated plainly, I respect myself too much to let anyone dictate my career choices. While she takes it all in, we're taking a break. A twinge of remorse ran through me. I never intended to obstruct you. Miles reassured me you didn't. This was inevitable anyhow. I've noticed trends in the way she resolves disputes. Your altercation just sped up things. I sat silently for a while after we hung up, gazing out my office window at the Boston cityscape. I had seen this vista 1,000 times before, but today, something was different. As if the atmosphere had changed. Like, I had finally found my place, not just at Vertex, not just in Boston, but in my own story for the first time in a long time. No business school case study had prepared me for the ethical dilemmas that resulted from the unexpected collision of the personal and professional spheres. I set up a meeting with Diane, our chief ethics officer, that afternoon and gave her a clinical explanation of the circumstances. I need to make sure that my handling of the situation doesn't seem improper, I said in closing. Diane listened intently, then answered. Keep a record of everything. You should abstain from making any actions that directly affect Miles. Additionally, think about hiring an executive coach to assist in navigating the boundaries between personal and work life. I heeded her counsel and established explicit procedures to safeguard Miles's career and my own professional standing. Maybe that framework was exactly what was lacking all along, but it was odd to apply corporate governance to family drama. My own emotional reactions to the revelations of the weekend were still being processed at the time. I made an urgent appointment with my therapist, Dr. Levine. After I told her about the altercation, she said, You stood up for yourself. How did you feel about that? It was terrifying, I said. Then, freeing. You've described classic family dynamics, she remarked. The scapegoat who departs versus the golden child who stays. You were the self-centered one who followed your own path, while your sister's identity became entwined with being the nice daughter who made sacrifices. Neither description is true, I stated. Or fair. No, it's not, she concurred. However, those labels frequently establish themselves early and remain uncontested for years. How can we make it better? I inquired. Dr. Levine gave a soft smile. That is the crucial question. Adjusted expectations and ongoing honesty are the first steps. If your family changes at all, it won't happen right away. Mom called 2 weeks after the birthday celebration with heartbreaking news. Early-stage cognitive deterioration was confirmed by her physician. Not Alzheimer's, but persistent memory problems that would probably worsen. She remarked in a low voice, I should have told you sooner. Mom, Briar thought, I softly interrupted. You must promise me something. You'll tell me these things straight from now on. Not via Briar. Not via Dad. Me and you alone. We must mend our friendship without using middlemen. I swear, she said. And I detected determination in her voice for the first time in a long time. Actually, I've been considering. Is there any way I could come see you in Boston? You see your life there. I was surprised by the question. Neither of my parents had been to my adoptive city in 15 years. Mom, I would adore that. When did you think? Next month. Your dad is planning a fishing vacation. Something long chilly within of me was warmed by the hint that she wished to visit me alone, free from the interference of family dynamics. I said, I'll send you flight options tonight. I refocused my attention on the Singapore growth at work. Professional acuity resulted from the personal clarity. I discovered that I was taking more calculated risks, standing up to terrible ideas with more assurance, and zealously supporting my colleagues. My employer, Alan, said, There's something different about you, following my successful negotiation of a challenging vendor contract. More focused. I responded, shocking us both with the intimate revelation, I'm learning to bring my whole self to work. The situation with Miles was still tricky. We interacted in a totally professional manner in the office. We did, however, occasionally get together for coffee on the weekends, which served as a neutral setting for processing the continuous family drama, much like co-workers debriefing after a crisis. He continued to correspond with Briar sometimes, but their relationship remained on hold. During one of those coffee dates, he informed me that she was seeing a therapist. Your mother demanded it. More than anything else, the news gave me hope. Briar's voluntary request for assistance raised the possibility that she was at last prepared to consider her own part in the dysfunction in the family. The most surprising email I've ever gotten came 3 months after the birthday altercation. The CEO requested a meeting to talk about a new vice president role that would involve managing worldwide operations. More responsibility, more travel, and far greater visibility inside the organization would all result from the promotion. It was the kind of chance I had previously only imagined. CEO Camille Rhodes made an unexpected question during the interview. The position calls for having tough conversations and maintaining composure under duress. Describe a moment when you exhibited those traits outside of the workplace. After taking a big breath, I delivered a carefully edited version of the birthday confrontation, excluding the unpleasant family specifics and emphasizing emotional integrity, boundary setting, and expressing the truth. Camille gave me a contemplative nod when I was done. Sloan, that's precisely the reason we're considering you for this position. Although you have extraordinary technical skills, what really makes you stand out is your guts and honesty. I accepted the vice president post a week later. My mother was the first person I phoned. With a voice that was clear and present for the first time in years, she said, I'm so proud of you. I've always known that you were meant for great things. Even at scientific fairs, where I was placing third, I gave a gentle teasing. Especially at that time, she said. Because you did it just the way you wanted to. I became aware that something significant had changed as I hung up. I felt successful professionally and seen personally for the first time in my adult life, confident in my work and genuine in my family. At last, the barriers between those two universes were starting to fall down. My mother's first visit to Boston came 3 months after the birthday altercation when she landed at Logan Airport. Feeling as though I were picking up a first date instead of my own mother, I waited anxiously at the gate. Sloan, when she saw me, she called and waved enthusiastically. Somehow, she appeared smaller and more frail than I had remembered, but her smile was warm and her eyes were brilliant. I gave her an embrace and said, "Welcome to Boston, Mom. It's unbelievable that you're here at last." The ensuing week was nothing short of revolutionary. I showed Mom every part of my life here by taking 3 days off from work, which was so unusual that Tessa had to ask if I had a fever. The view of the Charles River from my apartment. The baristas at my favorite coffee shop know exactly what I ordered. I used to read in the public library's hidden garden during lunch breaks. As we strolled along the waterfront, she remarked, "It's beautiful. I understand why you love your life here." I took her to the Vertex headquarters on the 3rd day. Something inside of me was healed when I saw my mother interacting with my coworkers and watching her eyes brighten up when others complimented my work. There had always been a part of me that wanted to be known for who I was, not simply what I did. And perhaps more significantly, for the person I had grown into. This was no longer Sloan, the missing daughter's bizarre family story. It was the esteemed leader Sloan. Miles greeted us at Vertex in a professional manner while upholding the boundaries we had meticulously set. However, I saw the sincere regard in his conversation with my mother, the warmth with which he spoke. He had turned into an unanticipated ally in my family's healing journey, regardless of what had transpired with him and Briar. Something basic had changed when Mom came back to Chicago. We resumed our weekly calls, but this time they were more candid and in-depth. She started giving me little gifts, like a scarf that matched my eyes or a book she thought I would like. "I see you more vividly than words ever could," said the tokens. My dad tried too in his own clumsy manner. He began sending me tech-related emails with remarks like, "Thought you might find this relevant." Little yet significant steps. The most complicated problem was still the one involving Briar. We didn't talk to each other directly for 2 months following the altercation. Then, one evening while I was getting ready for a presentation, she called without warning. She stated without introduction, "I've been thinking a lot. A lot of therapy too." "That's good," I said warily. She went on, "I'm not ready to talk about everything. However, I wanted to mention. I realized now that I was mistaken in a few areas. It wasn't fair how I presented you to Mom and Dad." Although it wasn't really an apology, Briar's gesture was noteworthy. I said, "I appreciate you telling me that." She went on to remark, "Miles says you've been very professional about everything. He holds you in high regard." I said, "He's a good person. Whatever occurs between the two of you, I believe he is interested in you. We are resolving issues," she stated ambiguously. "In any case, I should leave. However, I wanted to let you know. I'm making an effort." Opportunities and difficulties increased when I was promoted to vice president. More travel was necessary for the position, including frequent visits to Singapore for our expansion there. Paradoxically, this led to more trips to Chicago because O'Hare became my go-to stopover for foreign travel. I started planning quick get-togethers with my parents during those layovers. Sometimes Dad stayed overnight, and other times it was simply dinner with Mom at the airport. Over time, these brief but frequent interactions created something more genuine than our previous tradition of stressful, required holiday get-togethers. During one visit, Mom informed me, with the right treatment, my health has stabilized. Reducing stress has greatly aided, the physicians say. She looked at me thoughtfully. I was literally getting sick from all that family conflict. I hosted Thanksgiving in my Boston apartment 6 months after the altercation over the birthday. The holiday that had previously signaled the breaking point was being reclaimed in a purposeful manner. Mom arrived early to assist with the preparations. A day later, Dad showed up carrying pie from his favorite bakery. Quiet but present, Briar arrived last and brought a bottle of wine with a handwritten tag that said, "Thank you." We cooked together, shared food that wasn't perfect but was real, and laughed a little too much about overcooked stuffing while seated at my dining table. Not a drama. Not a single explosion. No charges. Simply being there. Only people. Rebuilding slowly, honestly, just family. And I was thankful for Thanksgiving for the first time in years. As a pledge rather than as a show or a source of pride. that recovery is not a straight line, that connections can be made inside such boundaries, and that you occasionally get to write a new chapter, even in the messiest stories. The invitation was instantly accepted by Mom and Dad. Grayson also showed up with his new girlfriend. Despite declining, Briar sent a gift basket that was unexpectedly considerate. I became aware that this was the first family get-together that seemed authentic rather than staged as we sat around my dining table, which had been enlarged with a rented addition to provide room for everyone. We weren't acting out roles that we had been given as kids. We made the decision to connect as adults. Mom raised her glass and said, "I want to thank Sloan for bringing us together before we dine. In this lovely house, not only literally but also emotionally. Our family has changed because of your bravery in speaking the truth." Dad gave an unusually heartfelt nod. "I've been reflecting a lot about the type of father I've been, and the kind I hope to be in the future. Sloan, you have my admiration. Yes, your achievement, but above all your moral character." I was moved to tears by that recognition, something I had long sought and never anticipated. As everyone helped clean up later that night, another first in the Williams family's history, I got a text from Briar. "I hope dinner was a success. Next year, perhaps." More hope was contained in those 4 words than in 1,000 forced family photos. This personal journey yielded significant professional lessons. My leadership style changed, becoming more genuine and sympathetic. At Vertex, I discovered that I was coaching younger women who had trouble juggling work and personal obligations, frequently sharing abridged versions of my own narrative. I told a very bright analyst, "Your value isn't based on your professional accomplishments or your family's approval. It stems from living a genuine life and treating people with respect." During my subsequent performance review, Camille Rhodes, the CEO, said, "You've always had exceptional technical leadership skills. You're adding heart to it now as well. That combination is valuable and uncommon." My family had changed because of the birthday argument that I had previously thought would end everything. We weren't a picture-perfect, Hallmark movie family. We were still untidy, constantly learning, and still prone to reverting to our old habits. Now, however, we did it deliberately, with the forbearance to forgive and the bravery to call out toxic patterns. What my mother said when she was in Boston stuck with me. Being left out of a place where you don't really belong might sometimes help you discover where you do. She had been discussing my professional route, but relationships were just as crucial. Ironically, greater genuine connection had been made possible by the agonizing rejection she had at her birthday party. Mom wore the emerald brooch I had given her to every significant family event, making it her favorite piece of jewelry. A tiny representation of being noticed and remembered, even when far away. Mom, Dad, Briar, Grayson, and I are organizing our first family therapy session for this spring. Not because of our current crisis, but because we're determined to keep the mending going. It will take place in Chicago the following month. My flight has already been scheduled. Relationships within the family are dynamic. They are continuous trips. Maintaining them is a never-ending task. However, I've discovered that sound limits are unambiguous indicators that let us comfortably connect as our true selves, rather than barriers separating us from our family. I would now like to hear from you. Have you ever needed to confront relatives who misinterpreted or misrepresented you? How did you respond to it? Leave a comment below with your experience. For more tales about managing complicated relationships and discovering your own voice, please hit the like button and subscribe if this story spoke to you. I appreciate you listening to my story, and never forget that sometimes having the guts to tell your truth is the first step toward healing, even if your voice is tremulous. The problem with revenge is that it's not necessarily accompanied by rage or fire. Healing, developing, and leading a fulfilling life without seeking praise or approval can sometimes be the best kind of retaliation. You don't have to remain in that story if you've been pushed out, betrayed, or hurt. Establish your limits. Opt for peace. For you, not for them, let go with grace. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that completely altered your life? I'd love to know how you overcame it, so please share your story in the comments section. Because being heard is the first step toward healing.